Hey, what's up, guys? Allude Investor here talking about this market action today. We're going to talk Bitcoin price dip. We're going to talk maybe some guacamole dip, some cheesy dip. Okay, maybe not that. Welcome, everyone. Glad you're here. Always happy to have you. Man, I only do this many live streams when the market is crazy hot and moving up, or when the market is crazy and moving lower. Most of the times, it's just kind of going with the flow, enjoying the market trading, but not these days. Buy the dip, ladies and gentlemen. Buy the dip. Who's buying the dip? So just so you know, that's the title of the stream. That's not my financial recommendations or any advice to you guys. You guys do what you want. Good morning from New Zealand. We're very oversold short term. Absolutely. And so I'm going to cover the long-term charts, the short-term charts, the intermediate charts. No screen? Oh, man. Thank you for reminding me. Let me pull that up here. Should be coming up. Thank you for that. Should be up now. Good night from the Netherlands. I bet you guys are having a hard time going to sleep right now, right? Canary Island. That's where I need to be right now. I need to be on a nice island somewhere. I am in the United States. I'm in Arizona. It's about 100 plus degrees outside. This last 2 weeks have just been brutal. Like, nobody goes outside anymore. You only go outside if you absolutely have to, like if you need food or something. It's just too hot. Tomorrow is the rate hike. Is that the FOMC meeting? Yeah, I do watch the metals markets and the dollar and all that. So that is certainly something I track. But honestly, it hasn't really impacted the crypto markets a whole lot. The rates. I know some people say it does and all that, but I've just not seen a material correlation to the price versus the rate changes and what the FOMC and all that fun stuff is doing. So I do watch it, but not for Bitcoin. It's crypto winter. It is winter there. I always forget that, right? I have somebody that I talk to regularly, and they're in Australia, and they're freezing. It's like, man, opposite. I think I need to go to Sholo over there with you. Sholo's nice this time of year. Bear trap. So yeah, let's get to it. That's kind of what I'm thinking here, but there's a couple of things to keep in mind here. So if you missed my newsletter, or if you got it, bear with me. I'm going to quickly recap that and talk about some of the things I'm watching here, some near-term action. So no need to tell everybody what happened, right? We were all watching this symmetrical triangle pattern that was forming, and to be fair, it could have gone either way. And we broke the lower trend a few days ago. We had a little bit of a bounce yesterday, very weak bounce attempt, to be honest with you, and it bounced right into the moving average here on the 4-hour charts. I made a little bit of a few entries here and took a nice little bounce trade on a few names, Ontology, on Cardano, and a few other names, all on the USD tether pair, because getting in and out quickly is the name of the game here right now, and trying to preserve that. So once I saw that pop to the upside on BTC, we had that bull break. That was my signal. Sold into strength, took the profits on those trades, and it was literally a few hours worth of trading. Nothing substantial, but hey, you can make a little profit on a day like this. Why not? And so that was it. And then we started setting up again yesterday, but I didn't want to make the trade again just because risk was higher. We were no longer as oversold as we generally were. And so I just stayed out of the way. And then here we go this morning, selling off again, breaking below. And so we broke into resistance here. We broke support, bounced into a little bit of resistance. Now we're breaking lower. And ultimately, the level that everyone's watching is the March, April lows, which right now, for all intents and purposes, just call it 6,500, right? And if we close here today, and I expect we probably will, but if we close here, we will have a new closing low. You can see here, let me move the line to the exact point here. On a closing basis, we've been above, right around $6,600. We did dip below a few times, but on a closing basis, we've rallied higher. And the problem is, right, there's been talk of this triple bottom. This is not a very clean triple bottom. I mean, this is very clear descending triangle now, unfortunately. Now, it doesn't mean that we do a measured move and the descending triangle takes us down to $1,000. That's not really relevant at this point, just because of how far we've dropped and some other levels that I'll talk about here shortly. But the effect is going to probably be the same, right? There's the drop, and here's a couple of scenarios to point out. If this is a bear trap, everyone's watching a potential, let me put the brush here, right? Everyone's watching this low here, and then, of course, this spike low down there. And so people are thinking, hey, I'll take an entry here, low risk reward, and we drop lower, and we could see a spike down. Maybe people start shorting at that point. Maybe there's a panic, there's the capitulation, and then we rally higher, right? That's potential one. If we have that, you want to see a lot of volume. That's going to be the telltale. There's got to be volume. If it's just a dip lower in a rally, but the volume's not really convincing, I'm not going to probably do a whole lot with that. But you want to see the massive volume, the washout type of action, and a follow through the upside. I mean, the best case would be something like we saw in February with the biggest volume we had ever seen, and just after a big drop, and it was just climactic, right? And then from there, we rallied 95%, and many of the altcoins went up much more than that. And so that'd be that scenario. Alternatively, right, we do break, continue lower. The weekly chart certainly would support that, just because, you know, we had that one green week. We had the rally attempt, the chance to turn it last week. We closed on the low end way under that prior week and just completely broke that potential. And here we are heading lower. So the momentum on the weekly, absolutely in favor of the bears right now. Let me show the RSI on the weekly. The RSI on the weekly is at 42. Now, I have a strategy that I use in terms of RSI bands. Now, below 50, you're not really bullish, right? But below 40 is really when you start to confirm that it's probably going lower. If it stays above 40, then that's what I'm going to be watching out for. If we hit a low and RSI still 40, we could see a rally from that point higher on the weekly, and then we go from there to test support or overhead resistance. But for now, the daily RSI is here. It is in the oversold territory. And so because of that, shorting is also risky here. This is the same as buying when RSI is up here at 70 or a higher and you're expecting it to go much higher, right? The momentum is certainly in your favor, but at that point, the risk is higher. Same thing here. The momentum has absolutely been in the favor of the bears. This was a little bit of a bear flag we saw set up. We broke lower here over the weekend. But now that we've come this far, this fast, it's risky to short. It doesn't necessarily mean it's time to buy just yet. I'd like to see some confirmation in a reversal, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's time to short either, because yeah, we could break support and then see the reversal, right? And so just keep that in mind. If you're inclined to short, you got to always weigh the risks. The RSI is pretty low. Could it go lower? Absolutely. The MACD is confirming bearish, right? We had a bearish MACD cross and it's below the zero line. So that signals much stronger as opposed to if it was above the zero line. So the MACD is confirming bearish. Obviously, we're stretched down below the moving average right now. So there's always the risk of a little bit of a short rally, bear market rally here. But ultimately, is it just going to be a rally? Is it going to be a bounce, which sets the RSI up a little bit more for another pullback? That's yet to be seen. Now, bigger picture, you know, near term, yeah, we're oversold. Let's fast forward and look, you know, a few days and even a few weeks out. And let's say prices do break below, and we do one of these. We break below and we kind of bounce into resistance here, and then we continue lower. How low can we go at that point? And so I talked a little bit about that on Monday, and there's a couple of things to look at. If you look at the last pure price support, right, there's a little bit of support here. We'll call that intermediate support, right around 5,700 or so. And then there's the top of this prior base, which formed last September, October, during the China FUD, the Jimmy Diamond stuff, all that fun stuff. And then we broke out above 5K in October, and then it was off to the races. That's a very strong base, and that's right around 5K. You know, it's 49 and change. And so that's really the level that I'm watching if prices continue to go lower over the intermediate term. I'm not talking about tomorrow, but I'm talking about if we continue to grind lower, then this zone here is going to be the strong support zone, if you will. There's people that are saying 3K, 2K, 1K. I'm not in that camp. Could it happen? Of course. Let me go to a chart that has more history. And let's do this analysis. Let's do a Fibonacci retracement. And keep in mind, guys, there's very strong support here at $200. So we're not going to probably drop below that. Okay, that was a joke because they're a little too serious. And I understand, but I'm just trying to keep it light here. All right, so looking at the Fibonacci retracement. Now, I generally will measure this from what I considered the start of the bull, which was here in March, right around that $800–900 mark. But I'll show it two ways. I'll show it this way in a conservative way. If we look at the Fibonacci levels, clearly we've broken the 382. That wasn't much of a support. It was initially, and then it bounced, but then it broke below that, and now that Fibonacci level became resistance. You see that here? This was support. We bounced off the key fib. We dropped lower, and then now that fib is resistance. Then 618 wasn't even a level of support, sliced right through that. The last level, at least the key strong level that you never want to see dip below, otherwise that's just very deep of a retracement, is the 786. Currently, that sits at 49.82. So again, right around that 5K mark. Now this is using this as the low, right? This $900 mark. If you wanted to be super conservative and say, do a retracement for the entire bull market that started at the end of 2015, and you start from $200 and you go all the way to the top, because it's logarithmic, it doesn't really change it that much. It changes it by a factor of about $500. So instead of being 4,900, you're down to 4,440. So basically 4,500. And so again, you're seeing the same kind of target zone, 5,000, maybe a little bit lower if it overshoots, but that's really the key floor that I'm watching, and that's on this deep fib retracement level. So another thing I was looking at here, and people like to use this as a little bit of a gauge because it's really hard to do much in terms of fundamental analysis for Bitcoin. There's really only two things you can do, and you got to treat it much like a commodity. One is pure supply and demand. And we know that the supply structure of Bitcoin is very much bullish because of the limited quantity, the supply schedule. If you look at where we are in terms of the total, we're at 17 million out of 21 already out in the market. And so after 2020, the inflation rate is really going to start to drop. And so the supply is very much in favor of the long-term story. Near term, you look at what's the cost to produce this. And so there was an article here talking about the cost to mine Bitcoin, and this was based on just electricity prices, right? So there's much more that goes involved with the cost, right? You got to do the cost of the equipment and amortize that. You got to do the cost of the actual facilities and all the stuff that goes into a large operation, the staff and the maintenance and whatnot. But just looking at the electricity costs, you can see that it's all over the place here, with Venezuela being the cheapest at 531. But there was a summary here that basically kind of said, for the U.S., for Russia, it's $46.75. Iceland's $4,700. The U.S., it's about $4,750. So in the range of $4,700, $4,800 just using electricity costs. You factor in the other costs, and you're basically right back at 5,000 at least, if not higher. And so there's that aspect of it. So if you look at the fundamentals, in theory, unless there's big changes to the ASICs and electricity costs come down, all that stuff. But in theory, all things being equal, if prices start to live below that $5,000 marks, the miners can only last so long because they got to turn a profit. And if it goes below 5,000 for too long, then the miners will start to close down, hash power will drop, difficulty level will drop, and then it makes it easy to mine again. So it's kind of built into the system, right? So that's the other thing to keep in mind. The other fundamentals that at this point are speculation, but there's the potential of an ETF. There is the strong institutional demand. There's a lot of that coming online. Now that's going to take longer, right? Because even if they announce an ETF, sure, the price will run before the actual ETF goes live, but that's a little bit more longer term, right? There's not a It's not going to happen like they announce an ETF and then it's trading the next week. It's going to just be some time, but that would be a huge benefit to the market. So that's a couple of things that I'm watching, right? So in summary, like, where do I think it could go? I mean, at the end of the day, I'm trading this day by day. So if I see a strong reversal here, I'm going to start taking positions. I took some small trades yesterday, closed them out quickly, made, small. So at the end of the day, I'm just trading it day by day. But from a longer term perspective, we're in a little bit of a zone here. And so you have to ask yourself, right, is if I believe we're going to break below and the floor is going to be 5,000, right? What do I want to do in that scenario, right? You gotta kind of think that through. Is it easier for you to sleep at night if you're just waiting on the sidelines for that dip, or are you going to add new capital at that dip and just hold through it, or you just have, it just depends, or you're just going to wait for a bounce? I mean, you got to think about that, but you got to have some sort of plan, right? Because when it starts to happen, like now the emotions run hot, the mental clarity is not quite there. You've got cognitive bias, you have skin in the game, and so it makes it a lot more difficult to react as good as you should, right? So you gotta have those plans in place. But hey, we'll see. There's a lot of experts, a lot of smarter people than me calling for higher prices by the end of the year. We'll see if they play out, and we'll have to go from there. So that's Bitcoin. Let's go near term, looking at some very close action here. Going to the 1 hour charts, we had this little bit of a bear flag that formed yesterday. The support level to be watching, or now resistance level, is right around that $6,600 mark, in and around there, maybe a little bit lower because the 10 EMA is right around 66.50. And so you can see the RSI is down here near the lows, 21 on the 1 hour. On the 4 hour, there is a little bit of a bullish divergence forming. You can see the prices have gone lower. We went from 66.60 down to 64.44, but the RSI has not confirmed. The MACD, at least on the 4 hour, is very close to crossing, having a little bit of a bullish cross, but it's at the lows. It's sub-zero line, so not as strong of a signal. But we are seeing a little bit of a divergence. Now, is that an automatic buy signal? No, it's not, because that divergence can stay in place for some time. We saw that happen back here in late May. There was this divergence when prices were running lower here, and you can see the RSI was drifting higher. But look at how long it still went down for another couple of days before it ultimately bottomed. So not necessarily a buy signal, a little bit more of a maybe we're getting close signal, right? And that's how I'm using it. I'm using it kind of okay, we have that divergence starting to show up. Maybe the sellers are getting a little exhausted. I'm going to start paying attention here for a reversal type of signal, right? That's how I'm approaching it right now. And so for now, that's there. That's positive. The volume showing up here at the lows is generally positive when you see the bigger volume spiking near the lows, just because it tells you that some of the sellers are starting to give way here. The last holders are starting to capitulate here. But really the big sell signal was a break of this trend up here a few days ago. Once we broke that trend, that confirmed that bear flag, and it's pretty much been a quick move down since then. Yeah, and that's a good point. So you mentioned the RSI, not the RSI, but the shorts. That's a good point, right? The shorts are really starting to pile in here. And let me go here. And that's, you see the extremes at tops and at bottoms, right? Because the place to short was a couple weeks ago, not now, in my opinion. Where is it? There it is, right? So you're seeing the shorts really starting to spike. You're seeing the RSI on this really starting to spike. And that's just telling you that the shorts are really starting to pile on here, right? They're starting to move in here. Now, how long can they sustain that? It just depends on the price point. Eventually, those shorts do need to cover, and that's going to add buying pressure on the upside when we see that happen. So something to keep an eye on. I do make note of it, but I generally don't trade off of the short positions, the open interest on the long or the shorts. It's just an interesting point when you see it at the extremes. Let me see, what else can we look at? Let's do, I don't usually cover a whole lot of the other indicators on here. I try to keep it relatively clean, but I do look at other things from time to time when I'm doing analysis. The Bollinger Bands on the 1 hour, we are piercing below the Bollinger Band as the RSI is dipping here near the lows. That generally is going to show a little bit of a reversal. On the daily, it's also dipping below. The Bollinger Band did get pretty tight here in the last few days, but it could just be widening now. Volatility was very quiet, which is why the Bollinger Band was getting very narrow. And here we are breaking lower, increasing volatility there. So not a whole lot on that perspective. Nothing to look at on the Ichimoku side because we're well below the clouds. TK is cross bearish again. That's really it on the daily picture and the long-term picture. So I'm looking at Bcash. Nobody wants to look at Bcash. I mean, Bitcoin Cash. And I have nothing against Bitcoin Cash. In fact, I had a pretty little bit of a profitable trade yesterday on Bitcoin Cash. So take the setups as they come. All right. Let me go through some of these questions here. An abyss is a dip. Well, we're staring into the abyss, but it's just dipping for now. What's your guys' favorite dip? And you can't say guacamole or avocado dip because I already claimed it. All right. And so, you know, it's interesting, the sentiment in the space here, guys. I mean, I don't even know if I want to pull it up, but you look at crypto Twitter, man, we've gone downhill pretty quick on crypto Twitter. No more enthusiasm, no more talks of the bags they're holding. I see a lot of mudslinging. I see a lot of backbiting. I see a lot of negativity in the space. It's unfortunate, but that's the place we're at right now. I remember, and now it sounds crazy, but man, I remember when people used to donate crypto. It was commonplace. I used to get crypto donations for the YouTube channel and on the website and stuff. And I'm pretty sure that doesn't happen as much anymore. But yeah, very much negative. Bitcoin maximalists attacking everybody else attacking Ripple maximalists. And it's just, oh, the joys of the markets, the bear markets, how things change when we're not ordering our Lambos to be delivered in a month. Let's take a look at some of the other names here that I'm watching. I'll go through the USD pairs here, and then we'll go through some BTC pairs. Right now, luckily, it's kind of nice that a lot more exchanges are adding these USD pairs because it makes it easier to preserve on a dollar basis, preserve capital, as opposed to having to cycle into Bitcoin and then move into an alt. So Cardano Tether, looking at this on Binance, again, we are seeing a little bit of a bullish divergence as the price moves lower, the RSI is moving higher, volume is spiking here, but again, not necessarily a buy signal, it's just something to start paying attention to. And we're seeing this across the board. Bitcoin Cash versus USD back here at sub 900 levels. RSI, slight divergence, not as strong as some of the other names. Binance has been one of the stronger names here. You go to BNB on the daily chart, and this is versus Tether. You can see it's just been a steady march higher, still maintaining this broader uptrend. And so definitely want to keep an eye on. I'm going to jump ahead here and go to Binance BTC, and you can see that's still in new high territory versus BTC. And that's because Bitcoin's dropping, this thing's not dropping as much, and so it's rising relative to Bitcoin. A little bit long in the tooth now, but RSI doesn't quite matter as much, especially because of the way this is slowly increased. But man, has absolutely been a portent storm here during this pullback. EOS, looking at EOS here, I'm going to go back to the 4-hour charts here. EOS, again, also slight divergence on the 4-hour chart, well below that moving average. The price level to be watching here now, let me pull this line down, is going to be around 1050. It's going to be that first near-term resistance if this thing bounces. Ethereum, this one's very stretched to the downside. When I'm looking at bounce trades, I tend to pick the more stretched ones as they tend to snap back quicker here. But looking at Ethereum, 512 or so is going to be that first resistance level, and it's going to line up pretty well with the 10 EMA on that 4-hour as it'll continue to decline here. Litecoin sub 100 at one point was at $94 Litecoin. Wow. And Litecoin really has been one of the laggards, and so it's getting hit pretty hard here on this recent pullback. But man, look at Litecoin. Since the top here, you know, I had that double top here on the 4-hour chart, on the daily chart here around 180. It is at the lows today was down about 50% in 38 days. So it's been quite the move lower for Litecoin. Neo, man, $41 Neo, breaking below the April lows here and just really, really looking weak here, Neo. I mean, it's been following suit with most of the market. This chart looks almost just like Bitcoin, except for it's a little bit more, a little bit higher percentage wise, right? But same pattern. You had that bear flag and then just this rollover. But even since the rollover, I mean, this 30% down in just a little over a week. So very much washed out in a lot of places here. We're due for a bounce. Is it the low? Does it mean that's it? It's over? Not necessarily, but we are absolutely due for a bounce here on a lot of these names. Quantum was showing some life yesterday, was really starting to rally, but then hit a lot of resistance, saw a big reversal. This started to roll over here. But if you go to the 1 hour chart, this thing was coming off the lows here, was one of the stronger names off the lows. I mean, gave you a 15% move in 9 hours. Not a bad little trade. But that's, of course, assuming you sold at the very top, which no one ever does. Unless you get very lucky. Lumens, big spike lower on big volume. Seeing a little bit of support coming in. So definitely one to keep an eye on here. If you look at the price level on Lumens, let me move that lower here. Where is that? Right there. Right around 23.5 cents on the USDT. Something to be watching here in the near term, but you're seeing that big candle, and this one's very stretched to the downside here. It's, you know, if you go from the 10 EMA on the daily, we're down 15%. So could be a quick snapback if it bounces. Ripple looking similar there. Going to the Ripple daily. Let me go to another exchange for Ripple. Get a little bit more longer term picture on this guy. Let's do Ripple Bitfinex. I've been watching this one for a little bit here. Let me clear the lines. Clearly, we've broken below that, making a little bit of a double bottom here on the daily chart here with the low right around that 54 cent mark. So be interesting to see if this one holds. Not much of a divergence on the RSI, but hey, if we start to reverse here, that'd be ideal. Going up on the upside, the first resistance is going to be right around 62 cents or so. We covered EOS, and lastly, Ontology. Again, another one that I did a quick trade on yesterday. Kind of nice that they have this USDT pair on Ontology here. So was bouncing into this, and look at the levels that I was watching. I was looking for a bounce into this first key fib level, and this thing hit almost exactly into that. It overshot the 10 EMA on the 4 hour, but went right into that fib level, which is also close to this resistance level, so somewhere in there. And then we saw the pullback happen. So same story, different coin. All the charts are looking very similar right now. Let me take a look at your comments, see what else we want to look at here. Oh, Ethereum Classic. I'm sure you guys are all aware of that now, but Coinbase adds Ethereum Classic support, which is surprising, honestly. But hey, I guess, you know, I guess not. I guess they were holding all that Ethereum Classic from the fork because Coinbase was supporting Ethereum before they forked. So they had it all there, but big volume pop on that news, and it's actually held up relatively well. Generally, when you see those like exchange announcements or something like that, there's the big spike, and then you tend to see the slow sell-off. But this thing is holding up, so it might give you another leg up if the market can get going here. So this is interesting to watch, at least for a shorter term trade here. Let me move this line here. Let me clear this line there. So yeah, looking at the, what is that, right around 2100, 2200 or so. If it can hold support there, that seems to be where it's trying to hold. Let me look at the USD pair on this thing. ETC. Let me do dollar. I know this is calculated, but looking at dollar, that's right around 14 bucks here. So a little bit higher, 14.30. That's where it's holding. Interesting to see that one though. Look at that. It's holding that 10 EMA on the 4 hour chart too. So might not be a bad secondary entry here with the tighter stop, 3% or so. All right. Let me catch up here a little bit on the questions. How do I feel about the CME future suppressing the price? Well, I said this from the get-go when they were launching futures, and we were in the parabolic run last December. And you remember there was 2 rounds of futures, right? There was the CBOE and then the CME, and the CME was going to be the big dog, trading much more volume. And Bitcoin topped I mean, to the day when futures went live. Coincidence? Maybe, but I doubt it, right? And so now is it suppressing prices? I don't know, but I know that here it just made sense for any Bitcoin holders to go short there and then start selling Bitcoin and make money on the other side, or at least hedge their losses on the other side. Now that the futures were there, right? So that's there. Now that we've had the big sell-off, right? Are they suppressing prices with futures? Not necessarily, right? Because the futures market is not, at least for Bitcoin, it's not to the point yet to where it's one of these the tail wags the dog scenario. For some other markets, right? When you look at big commodity markets and all that, the futures, they basically are the price. They rule the price of the commodity, the underlying commodity. But with Bitcoin, right, it's not that as big yet to the point where everyone's watching the futures prices and saying, oh man, the futures prices are going lower, sell Bitcoin, or they're going higher, buy Bitcoin, right? And so I'm not so sure it's necessarily suppressing the price. Not yet. And it is a zero-sum game in theory, right? You're supposed to have a long for every short on the futures, much like options. Let's see here. Mike Novograd said the real bubble will be at $20 trillion market cap. Man, hey, I'll take a $20 trillion market cap. Speaking of market cap, let's go check that out. We are what, 250? No, not 250, 270 or something right now? Maybe not. I'm scaring you guys. 283. How low can we go? Well, if you look at the coin market cap here, I mean, let me go to the yearly chart. The low in April here had a market cap of around 255, a little bit higher now, but really below that, I mean, we had a very quick rise. I mean, the last big peak was around 170s, and we had that big run up that took it well over 200, right into 300, and then before the dip. So at this point, I mean, I don't usually use the market cap as a normal chart just because it changes so much. New coins are added, all that stuff, but it's still very much dominated by the big players. So it does have a little bit of weight there. But that, do I see it going below 200? Probably not. But hey, if Bitcoin drops to 5K, it sure could. Let me go to the list here on the week. Looking at the top 100 in the 7-day period here, and it's cranking. Sorry about the delay. Let me drink some water while I'm waiting here. No. Well, some of the biggest losers here: Bitcoin Cash, EOS, Tron. There it goes. It's cycling through. I think I clicked it too many times. Doesn't matter. You guys get the gist here. Let's go look at some charts. All right. Neo under $40 soon. Man. Let's see where Neo's at. Was it 41, 44? Yeah. What a drop there it has been for poor Neo. Yeah, it could. I mean, it's right back here. It's at the key support level. Should I sell all my alts to BTC? I've cut loose a lot of my spec names, which weren't a huge portion of my portfolio anyway, but I have cut loose a lot of those and moved them back into BTC just to wait it out a little bit. So let's go through some names here. WanChain. Not all of my alts, by the way. Not all my alts. I'm about 68% BTC on the long-term portfolio. On the trading account, it's all cash. WanChain. Man, WanChain. No signs of a turnaround yet on this guy. I mean, it is oversold, absolutely, but still no signs of strength. You had a chance here with this big volume reversal. Just couldn't confirm, just rolled right over. So not seeing anything there yet. At this point, I just want to wait until this thing takes out the next resistance level, which now that it's dropped is going to be right around that 48.50 mark or so, which is also lines up with the 10 EMA on the 4-hour. BNB is a new stable coin. It's interesting how with every bear phase or pullback, there's always a coin that is resilient, and it's never been the same one. And so I always find that interesting. All right, let's see here. Saya coin. Haven't looked at that guy in a while. Let's go check out Saya, not take out. Take out Saya coin. Check out Saya coin. You know, considering it's held up relatively well compared to some of the others. And a few of these names have, right? You can see what I look for is, okay, what was the April low? And Saya coin was way down anyway. And then the run and how far back has it retraced? In the case of Neo, for example, you can see it's already undercut. In this case, it's actually holding up better than some of the others. Let me go to the 4-hour chart here. But in the near term, I mean, you had a chance here a couple days ago to rally, just really drifting lower here, retesting these lows, but no signs of bulls showing up just yet here. Icon, man, just really getting hammered here. But here's what I always look for, right? When you see the drop, and then the drop starts to go almost like inverse parabolic, you're probably due for a bounce there at least, just because things don't just go straight down for too long. Generally, that tends to mark the near end of the low there. So, you know, the spike could be big, but from a time perspective, you know, you can almost bank on, yeah, this is probably going to see a bounce here in the next couple of bars there. But man, not looking too pretty here. What was some of the other ones here? Hold on. You guys are typing fast. Bear market crunching dry ramen. Oh, man. I can't even afford guacamole dip now. I got to use ramen dip. Buy the dip. Aeon, that's the other one. All right. Check out this guy here. That's the 1 hour. Let me go to the 4-hour chart on this one here. Yeah. Seeing a new lower low versus yesterday. But, yeah, slight divergence here showing up here on this one. Let me go to the daily. I think this is new lows, right? Like new exchange lows. Oh, no, it's not. It's like right there. It's always hard to tell in the picture here, but man, it's right there. Just today, yesterday, I guess it cut below and bounced back. Here it is cutting below. RSI here is at 26 on the daily, so definitely washed out. But wow, no strength here. And I really had high hopes for this guy here after it started building this base here. It was looking really strong, looked like it was about to get going, and then just with the rest of the market teetered out in mid-May. And not looking too good here. But yeah, it's at new lows here, so it's anyone's guess now. Stratus. Apparently, I was watching the same pattern show up on Stratus. I think somebody asked me about this in the live stream, and I pointed out this little symmetrical pattern. And you can see we breaking below that support line there on the trend line. Now, on a horizontal price point, it's basically right at that price point there. So you can see on the, move this off the volume. Let me clear this. You can see it's trying to hold there. So it'd be interesting to see if we could get a little bit of a bounce here on this guy. And if we get a rally, that's going to really be the test on that trend line. But man, if it rallies that high, that's a pretty decent, what, 25%? I'd take a 25%. ARC was doing something similar, and unfortunately also has broken below here. Man, I got to start clearing my charts before I come on here with you guys. You can tell I do a lot of charting. Always watching stuff here. But I was really liking this setup here, especially on the weekly. I mean, the long-term chart of this guy was just getting very nice, ready to bust out here. And unfortunately, market overcame this guy, and just we had a rally attempt above the trend line there, and it was met with a lot of selling. Saw a pretty big volume reversal and has just not been able to recover. Has not been able to recover since then. You can see it's been down for basically 5 weeks now. Let me see here. Oh, BAT. Look at the basic attention. This is an interesting weekly pattern here because it's still forming this very tightening pattern here. You can see it's getting tighter. The swings are getting smaller. So if it forms a higher low here, Definitely one to watch. It's going to be an interesting play out here to see if how this resolves itself one way or the other. Do we rally and then break lower, or do we make, so if it makes a new lower high, that's going to be it, right? It's going to see where that plays out. This is on the weekly, so bigger term picture. Near term, let me clear these for you. It had a good chance to rally here, but it's just retraced this entire move. But man, this was looking really strong here earlier and just giving it all up, but still, not too bad here from a relative perspective. And, like I said, looking at that weekly chart, it's setting up potentially there, but it's still higher than the April lows. So we'll see if this can be the low here and pause for a little bit. On the daily, the RSI does have room to go if it wants to continue lower. V-Chain. V-Chain. V-Chain still holding the trend line here versus BTC. So you can see there, let me kind of clear this. We had that bounce, made a higher low or a lower high. Now we're making a higher low. And so if we can hold here, that's going to be positive, because then at that point, what I'll be looking for is a break above this lower resistance level now as opposed to a new high. And so if it can start to do one of these where it bounces right here, that's going to build an ascending triangle pattern with a lower entry point, right? You don't have to wait for the higher point to be the official breakouts. Generally, if it makes a high right around this prior high, but keeps the higher low pattern going, I really start paying attention at that point. So we'll see how this plays out. I mean, this is very preemptive. If it breaks below that line, then that pattern is no longer in play, but something I'm going to keep an eye on there. Let me go, what else here? They will crush BTC throughout August and possibly September. Anything's possible. You could just as easily say BTC will rally throughout August and September. I mean, at this point, those would actually be pretty good odds, right? After the big pullback, you could say that. Man, NAV, once it broke that support line here a couple days ago, quick move to the downside. How far quickly did we go here? NAV dropped about 14% in 3 days here. Definitely hit some oversold conditions. A little bit of a bullish divergence showing up on this 4-hour with some high volume there. So interesting, but no signs of the bulls showing up just yet on NAV. But yeah, that's new lows, right? New lows, at least for Binance on the Binance exchange. That's new lows for NAV. Poor NAV. Neblio. I haven't looked at this one in a bit. Also broke major support. This was a level to be watching. And you can see we sliced below, bounced right around it. But here we go, breaking lower. And are we back to this level here? Looks like we are. Almost. Not quite, but basically undid this entire rally that we saw in January. And just giving it all up. Slow drift lower on Neblio. This is small cap too, right? Or not small, but mid. It is still small. Let's see how it is. Neblio. $73 million market cap now, coming off of a high of around 800 million. Wow. Was it really 800 million? Let me take these off. Yeah, it was 7 something. 750 down to 73. Wow. All right, let's keep going. Lisk. A lot of valuation resets on so many of these names. Lisk is right at support here. Must hold. Teetering on the brink. Below this here. Next level down, very much like some of these other charts, they break and they're kind of in a middle zone there. It's not a huge zone, though. I mean, this is going to be another 10, 15% lower if it breaks the next level. So that's something to watch here. Let me look at a fib. And this is on Binance. We can take a look at another chart. But look at that. That's right at the 786, almost to the penny right now. And it's tested it twice. So we'll see if this holds. Nano. Yeah, Nano got hammered too. Man, what hasn't got hammered? Let's go look at some charts that haven't been hammered. Oh, man. Yeah, Nano broke the lows there. And that was a descending triangle pattern. I remember looking at this one in the last stream, and I kind of pointed out that the pressure was built into the downside, and it is breaking lower now. Knowles is one that hasn't been hammered. Or maybe not. Let me check. Knowles is breaking support today. Something I was watching here in this little bit of a pullback. It really needed to hold and turn the corner here and start moving above this trend line. So now that it's breaking that, a little bit of damage being done technically to the chart there. It is a little bit oversold, but man, that was a key level that I really wanted to hold. Tether's up. US True USD is rocking. Oh, man, look at that. What a bullish chart. True USD is up 20%. Now that's a stable coin right there. OMG. OMG. Yeah, another name that does trade dollar pair, which I like right now, and potential divergence showing up on OMG here. You can see this guy with the RSI here drifting a little bit higher as it pulls back further. Again, not a buy signal in and of itself, but something I start paying attention to when I see here on the dollar chart. It's basically right back to this consolidation, fully retraced. If they can close above or right at yesterday's lows, that would be ideal, right? If it can stage a rally, there'd be 3 attempts closing above this. Generally, that holds if you see that on the candle patterns. Let me see what else we got here. ICX Quantum, we did, I think we did Quantum. We did Quantum Dollar. Let's take a look at Quantum Bitcoin. Not quite retracing the March low, but this one never really got going and had that initial pop. Some of this was unused. Binance was adding dollar pairs, and then it started to get going, but it just could never actually follow through on the breakout. It had a breakout attempt here, and it just rolled over and just has been one of the weaker ones here in this move. So you can see yesterday it was trying to and just keeps getting sold into. Walton coin also had a breakout attempt, and it was a failed breakout, unfortunately, and just rolling over here. And now, man, it's undercutting these lows. Nope. Well, it's right at the same lows there. So see if that can hold. But I just don't like these breakout attempt charts, unfortunately. I'd rather take a chart that's been going straight down for some long time and then take a trend reversal there versus something that attempted to break out and just rolled over. Just me. ZIL. And we did VChain. I have no idea who VChain is. All right, looking at ZIL. Man, ZIL was looking good last week too. Just really got smacked here. And here's the thing, guys. I'm being repetitive here, but I want to make a point, right? The fundamentals of technical analysis come down to 2 things: support and resistance. And there's a couple of ways to measure support and resistance. The most important, of course, is horizontal price support and horizontal price resistance. But there's also trend lines that are formed as prices move higher. And that's because there's an old saying: price and time are linear when it comes to investments. And that's because of psychology. I mean, think about it this way. If you were holding right here, or you saw the rally, the bounce, or the pullback, and you were thinking, man, I could have sold at 1636, and now here I am sitting at 1546, and it bounces 5 or 6%. Suddenly, you know, you're not as far lower, so you're thinking, I'm going to just sell here at 1580. Then other people start doing the same thing, and it goes lower, and then it rallies again, and every bounce gets lower because of that linear mentality, right? I'll take less and less and less. I mean, just think about it this way. We're all looking at Bitcoin, and if we all saw 8,000 Bitcoin tomorrow, we would be ecstatic. But 3 months ago, if somebody would have told you 8,000 Bitcoin, that was the end of the world, remember? And so you get used to different price points because of that process of the time span and living within a price zone. And so it's the same thing, right? It's on the way up. The price that used to excite us maybe up here at at 11.7, right? We were all worried about, oh man, it's at 9,400. Over here in May, we're excited. We're like so excited about 9,400. That's because it's all relative, right? It's because of we came up so high, but same concept. So that's support and resistance are formed, and trend lines are formed because of that linearity. Wabi. And so because of that, I'm going to keep going on my rant while I look at some charts with you guys. Because of that, that is why that old saying, the trend is your friend, is so important, because trends tend to continue for a while until the sellers or the buyers overtake one side or the other and then turn the corner, right? And so when you're trading, if you're trading, now I know not everybody is an active trader, but if you're trading, you always want to go in favor of the trend. So if something is trending higher, then you're looking for breakout plays, you're looking for secondary entry plays, you're buying dips, you're doing all that. If something is going lower, you're shorting into bounces, or you're selling into bounces and getting out of the way, right? You're not necessarily looking to go long and catching the bottom. So going with the trend is always much better. It's always much more profitable. So looking at Wabi here, also undercutting some lows there. Just in the last few days, just really breaking below. And unfortunately, this is a key break, because look at all the volume that was showing up here at these lows, starting to really establish the support level, rallied, and once it breaks, that's a big loss of confidence there. Trend is your friend until they bend, right? Yeah, until they're not. All right, you got the 100th like. Excellent. Let's do Dragon. Dragon. Oh, man, Dragon. I already know how this chart looks. Dragon, just not pretty. Not pretty, unfortunately. Dragon was breaking, had a really good chance to establish this double O here. Very big volume came in, really got going, and then just teetered out completely and just really accelerated the downside. But wow, is this guy oversold? On the daily chart, that RSI is at 22. On the 1 hour chart here, it's already starting to bounce a little bit, but it was way down there. Let me see the 4 hour. Man, pretty oversold there. Might have to take a look at that one later. Potential bounce play. Very much oversold near these historic long time lows here. I mean, this is the exchange debut here on KuCoin, and you can see prices are basically right back at there. So, wow, fully retraced. How many shots have I taken today? None. Staying clear, my friends. Looking at the charts, I haven't done any trading today either. Can you believe that? No trading. Not yet. Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Mike Tyson. I love that quote. It's so true. Oh, man. Are your viewers growing compared to last year? I have more subscribers compared to last year, but the views are not. And I think that goes hand in hand with the broader crypto sphere, right? It's just people are losing interest. Or let me put it this way, you're not getting the influx of new people that we were getting in Q3 and Q4. And that's just how it goes with markets, right? You see people wanting to rush in because everyone's talking about it on social media, and their friends are all talking about how they've doubled and tripled and quadrupled their money in the last year. And so everybody wants in, and naturally the space grows and it gets, more interest than otherwise would. And so, no, we're not seeing that anymore, especially this far into the market pullback, right? Now that we're almost 6 months into the bear, people are worn out. And seeing prices drop and drop and drop. So you're not getting that interest. Yeah, everyone's talking about how they lost their life savings and how all that fun stuff, right? Nobody listens to the advice of never invest more than you can afford to lose when the market is going parabolic. Everyone says, yeah, I know that, but who cares? Until it turns around, and then they care. All right, substratum. I haven't looked at this guy in a while. Looking at substratum. So RSI here, a little bit of divergence, and this one is, I mean, it looks like it was oversold for a while here, but just continues to drift lower. With let me see here. I need to just switch back to trading view. But yeah, it's just where's the low? It's had a rally attempt here a couple days, just not quite there. Definitely overstretched on the downside here on the daily though. Down about 14% from the 10 EMA. And I use the shorter term moving averages because when something is that stretched from the very short term moving average, generally you'll see a little bit of a bounce. You can see back here, we were down 20%. You can see back here, we were down probably 25% or so. What was that? 22, 23%. So when you get in that realm, you can almost bank on a bounce, at least a bounce. Let's do some traditional markets. You know, I do from time to time. I've thought about it on this channel. I don't usually on the channel a whole lot, but there are some names that I'm watching here, some potential. The biggest pattern that I'm watching right now is this guy on the weekly chart here. Is this this long time weekly chart of silver? It's going to break one way or the other. And for those of you that play options and stuff, you can play this so that you don't really care which way it breaks. You'll make a profit after a certain price point. But man, look at that chart. That's going to go one way or the other. What else here? Gold's. I mean, it's still setting up here. The long-term price point that I'm watching there is above that $1,300 mark. Really needs some breakouts there. Yeah, there's some other stuff. There's some stocks that I'll trade and watch and stuff. But you guys know this channel's crypto. All right, let's keep going here. Let's go back to Bitcoin. How's the BTC looking? Seeing a little bit of a bounce here on the 1 hour? No, not really. If anything, that looks like a little bit of a bear flag. A tiny 1 hour bear flag. How about stocks? Stocks are more interesting. Yeah, they're more interesting. I don't know about that, but they're different. You know what I don't like about stocks? Here's what I don't like. Which, I mean, it sounds stupid because that's the whole point of a stock. It's a company. But the earnings season, man, it's like every 2.5 months, you're back into earnings season. And you get the gap ups and the gap downs, and you really can't trade during that time unless you're like trading on that strategy. And it's just the gaps, the stock gaps. At least, crypto is exhausting sometimes because it's 24/7. But hey, at least we don't got the gaps. Those gaps on the stock market would drive me nuts, man. All right. But I still have a trading account in the stock market. Just not as active there. What else? Looking at some names here. Gonna do a few more, guys, and then we'll wrap it up. I've been going for almost an hour now. Wanted to give us a quick update. So if you missed the beginning of the stream, I covered the price points to be watching, some of the levels near term. Yes, we are oversold. If you look at this 4-hour chart, it's certainly starting to get in the realm of the oversold conditions again after the little small tiny bounce we had yesterday, relief rally, that's all it was. But we are seeing a little bit of a divergence show up. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a buy signal. We had that same effect show up here in May. Whoops. Back here, and that lasted for a long time before the actual low was in. So just keep that in mind, right? It could continue to just stair step its way lower and maintain that posture, but until then, just got to wait for signs of the low, wait for that bullish reversal action here near term, more intermediate term, more long term. As I mentioned, some of the levels to be watching, and I went through a couple of different ways to get there, is ultimately the mid to low $5,000 range, right? And maybe even overshooting a little bit to 4,800 if you do fib retracement analysis and all that. But that's ultimately the box to be looking if we break below. And there's the third scenario, or the next scenario, which I talked about, right? If these levels don't hold and we don't build a new base here, there's always that potential of the quick spike lower, the big washout, and then the pop higher, the short squeeze, the bear trap. And so that's what makes it so risky here, both ways, right? Because it could go either way. And I think the market is just so jumpy now that the move could be extreme either way. So let me see here. I'm going to do a few more, guys. Have patience. All right. Will I be able to buy pot with Potcoin? You know, Dennis Rodman can confirm that one way or the other. Potcoin sponsor, I know. I didn't even know Potcoin was still around, and they just keep popping up. It's like, really? Oh, man. All right. We did Stratus. And I think the summary of Stratus was it broke below that trend line. Or no, it's holding on the BTC side. It broke below this potential flag. That's what it was that we were watching. That Bitcoin was also forming, but it's holding this support line here on the price point still. All right. My bullish long term on ICX. I am. I think that's a good project. They've got a good team. I think they have a long ways to go still, though, technically, and so it's not as near term as we would like it to be. I know they're doing some things. They got some partnerships with, you know, kind of identity stuff. They're doing some enterprise things, but some of the big things like the cross blockchain technology and some of that is still a long ways out. When I was asking the team, when I met with them, I was talking to them and saying, "Have you guys tested that? Is it how far away is that? Is it even prototyped yet? Is it doing it?" And that you could tell that was just no, we're not there yet. Doesn't mean that, you know, the blockchain's not good. It's just that aspect of it. It's not ready. Long term, I think it's still a good project. It's going to take some time. Yeah, so the downside target of descending triangle is supposed to be the height of the triangle. And I mentioned that, right? And it depends on, you have to take everything relative to the price, right? So if you did that on BTC here, you know, you're going to project down to like 1,000 Bitcoin or something, just because of the exponential nature of this rise here. So if you did that, let me kind of walk you guys through what they're asking about. And I'm going to give you an example as to why and when you do this and you don't, right? So this is normally how you do it. And it's just a technical projection. It doesn't always have to play out. But you can see if you did it on Bitcoin, right, that takes you down to $1,100, right? And it's like, okay, now is that likely? Probably not, right? And so doesn't mean that if we break the support here, it's still going to be the same effect. I'm just not going to use that as my target basis. Instead, I'll be using other things like the bases on here, the price points that I pointed out. You know, the $5,000 mark, the $3,000 mark, Fibonacci retracements. You know, I start using other levels at that point and not the technical downside projection. Here's a good example of that, right? Last year, Litecoin versus Bitcoin staged a pretty good, here it is, inverted head and shoulder pattern. And I was watching this thing play out. And so you can see the neckline was pretty clear. There was the, I said inverse. I meant regular head and shoulder pattern, right? And so you saw the head and shoulder pattern forming, and you do the same thing with this pattern, right? You take the height, top of the height. And this had a little double top in there, by the way, which did play out on the projection, but anyway. And then you're supposed to move that lower. But in this case, it was the same thing, right? Just because it was exponential, it's like, okay, if I do that, oh man, Litecoin's going to zero, right? And so obviously that wasn't going to happen. So you can't factor that measurements that way, right? So, but the effect was the same, right? Ultimately, it broke the neckline and it went lower, right? And it went lower by a pretty good margin. I mean, it bottomed out 45% lower, but I didn't use the technical measurement as my target, right? And so same thing with Bitcoin right now. If you measure the descending triangle pattern, you're going to say, oh man, Bitcoin's going to $1,100. I would bet you're going to be waiting a long time if you're waiting on Bitcoin 1,100. Okay, I've rambled long enough, my friends. Let me see here. I'll do a few more here. I got a few more names coming in, and then we will wrap it up. So appreciate you guys being here. I know the market's tough right now, guys. I know it's nerve-wracking to see the prices just grind lower, but ultimately it's just going to depend on your personal strategies. If you're trading, if you're long-term, and if you're long-term, when you got in, right? If you got in back here sub 1,000, you probably don't care a whole lot. Or if you took partial profits at the top and you've been buying here again at the lows, you probably don't care as much as if you bought at 20,000 for the first time and you're seeing you're down 70% now, right? So it's just going to depend. But just be nice, people. That's all I can say. Be nice. Everyone these days is a critic. Everyone's these days is mudslinging. The crypto community has gotten very, very jaded. I know. All right, I'm ranting. Let me see. What was I going to look at? Oh, IOTA. That's what I was going to look at. IOTA. So this IOTA dollar on Bitfinex daily chart here. And IOTA, again, was one of the stronger names going into this latest rally. Some of that may have been kind of Binance adding it on there, but still not fully retraced the lows here from the early April period, but still not looking hot either, making it, higher or lower low, lower high type of action right now. So let me see on the divergence side here, a 4-hour chart. How's it looking? I mean, it is stretched to the downside, and like like many other, you're getting this type of action right now where you're getting that slight divergence showing up on the RSI, not on the MACD though. So that's interesting to see. The MACD's not showing that, just the RSI, which leads me to believe we're not done. We could see a bounce, but I don't think we're done. Bounces are probably going to be short-lived right now. The only thing that would change my mind is if we see a reversal that looks like this. One of those massive, high volume, up $1,000 in an hour moves, right? If you see one of those, okay, that's it, we're done. Shorts are going to start scrambling. But other than that, if it's just a normal bounce, right, that's probably all it will be for now is a bounce. All right. I think that's it. We did Binance Coin at the beginning and Bitcoin Cash. We did covered most of the big names here. All right, guys, I'll go ahead and wrap it up there. Thank you guys for being here again on another red edition of the Node Investor. Remember to buy that dip, guacamole dip, cheese dip, whatever dip you like. Just eat the chips, relax. Oh, it's kind of hard to relax right now, but okay, I'm being dumb now. But anyway, thanks for being here, guys. I'm gonna get back to it. Try to stay out of the heat in this Arizona blistering weather. Stay indoors, enjoy the air-conditioned room, and maybe take a look at the charts. Until next time, everyone, take care.